this very profitable business. Melissa Farrell says, while we probably have an edge over the other organizations, our organization has been doing research for many years. When researchers need a specific part from an aborted fetus, Farrell says, we bake that into our contract and our protocol that we follow this. So we deviate from our standard in order to do that. And she goes on to say she's from the Planned Parenthood Gulf Coast affiliate. Some of our doctors in the past have projects and they're collecting the specimens. So they do it in a way, meaning they commit the abortion in a way that they get the best specimens. So I know it can happen, altering the slaughter procedure to obtain parts. The investigators asked Farrell how she will frame a contract in which they pay a higher price for higher quality fetal body parts. And she says, we can work it out in the context of, obviously, the procedure itself is more complicated, suggesting that without having you cover the procedural cost and paying for the abortion, the higher specimen price could be framed as, quote, additional time, cost, administrative burden. So in other words, you get a better specimen of boy or girl, but since you can't sell the parts per se, you have to attribute the cost of the profit to additional time, cost, and administrative burden. In other words, the record keeping cost suddenly goes skyrocketing for that transaction. So the buyer can reward Planned Parenthood affiliate with a little bit of profit for that particular killing. She finally summarizes her affiliate's approach to fetal tissue payments. If we alter our process and are able to obtain intact fetal cadavers, we can make it part of the budget. That any dissections are this, and splitting the specimens into different shipments is this. It's all just a matter of line items. And that, of course, is the story behind the story that's been unearthed by David Tulis, the intrepid journalist who doesn't appreciate having his journalism hijacked by an indictment, which is what has happened. But that, of course, was just going to draw more attention to the arguments that he's making and has made. Hijacking is something that Tennessee is glad to yield to. I was mucking about in the statute a few days ago and found a law in which the General Assembly, our good Republicans and our good Democrats, in 2004 voted to allow the good people in Washington to hijack the whole state police apparatus. I think I'd say it starts at least at the Department of Safety and Homeland Security, the federalized driver's license agency. And it lets the federal government request the state's Commissioner of Safety and Homeland Security to convert state assets into federal ones. The DHS boss doesn't even have to go to the governor, according to the statute. He simply he goes to the Office of Homeland Security and applies to the Commissioner of Safety to commission officers and help in law enforcement activities involved in countering or responding to acts of terrorism. So if there's a terrorism event, he applies to the governor's director of Homeland Security, which is Bill Gibbons. The governor doesn't have anything to do with it just yet. He comes in, I think, in allowing in allocating the number of officers who are inducted, you might say, into federal jurisdiction. As Tennessee Code Annotated Title 38.3.114. The title is Acting as Peace Officers for the Office of Homeland Security. And it gives federal authorities exclusive control of state troopers and others that department might corral. The governor comes into the picture, as I say, when he has to pick the number of peace officers consigned. The federalized police are granted, quote, all the powers of a peace officer, including the power to make arrests for public offenses anywhere in the state. The rule goes on to say, further, such officers may serve process in criminal and penal prosecutions for such offenses and shall have authority to carry weapons for the reasonable purposes of their offices and while in performance of their assigned duties. I feel much better now. These officers will be given a federal badge and an ID card, which they are supposed to exhibit on demand and before making an arrest within a reasonable time. When Uncle Sam is done with his crisis, according to the statute, he relinquishes his grip upon the state. The Office of Homeland Security is expected to file a notice with the state Homeland Security Commissioner. Thereupon, the powers of such peace officer shall cease and terminate, according to the Tennessee Code. I'm relieved of this. I really am relieved that our legislators have thought of everything since the crisis of 9/11 and want to make it certain that we can have security, that we can be converted back to state citizens again, right? After being U.S. persons in the crisis, we become again citizens of the state of Tennessee. Of course, that kind of seizure of power and the grant of that authority doesn't convert anybody into a U.S. person or a federal citizen necessarily. There are other ways in which that occurs. My name is David Tulis, and we are here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. We are the station that has Binary, the tech show, every day at 11. Stay tuned to Russell, our news director, a real techie. And after him, we've got Colin Cowherd, Sean Hannity fill the afternoon with lively national and sports discourse. And of course, early morning, we've got America's Morning News, and it's all here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. And I'm streaming live on YouTube. I do thank you for checking out my bow tie if it's passable today. And on your smartphone, you can get us through the TuneIn Radio app. And this is David Tulis, caller. You're live on the air with at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio.
Great subjects, David. But I do have a couple of questions. Why would anybody want to be a Tennessee citizen? How is the state any better than the federal government? And I hear patriots talking about states' rights, and under Federalist 44 and 45, the states are tyrants. Aren't they allowing the slaughtering of unborn babies? I don't see sheriffs doing anything. As a matter of fact, the states in some cases are worse than the Fed. They're right next to you, and big fat zoning officers walk in and demand to see your papers, and everything's done from the state level. The state is evil. It's evil. So why are we fighting for states' rights? How about individual rights? You know, and listen, any nation that would allow the murdering of their unborn children is not blessed by God. These are evil, satanic devils. Barack Obama deserves to burn in hell. Every Democrat deserves to burn in hell, and every rhino, because on their platform, it's okay to kill unborn children. Now they're indicting a guy that exposed these murderers. These are a bunch of pigs that need to hang. And the only thing that's going to save them is if Trump gets elected. Because if he doesn't, I think the American Revolution is going to look like a tea party. Thanks, David.
Well, the idea of the states replicating the methods of the federal government is true. Yes. Why would we care about the state of Tennessee at all? Well, I think I do it this way. I realize that reality is very complex, right? Things are not as simple as public discourse often makes it out to be. We have in Tennessee commercial government. We have government run by lawyers, effectively run by political figures who are loyal to their own class of people. They're very high class people, very wealthy corporations. And I think have only a bit of civic mindedness in their constitutions, in their personal constitutions. They have yielded the state of Tennessee, just as high officials in every of the other 49 states have done the same, yielded their people to regulation and regimentation and militarization by Washington. Can we therefore discount the state as an intervening body vis-a-vis the national government? No, you have to look at the state as your defense. You have to esteem it for its best. You have to expect from the state the very best that it is promised to you in your state constitution. Our constitution says that we have free government and that we are a free people. Now, that doesn't mean that there has not developed parallel to the state and even behind it what you could call the deep state. Every state is a religious corporation in the end. It is a perfectionist, religious, salvific entity that promises salvation. It promises to be a self-perpetuating corporation that uses power and kind of a cartel heavy hand in the marketplace, unlike the the invisible hand of Adam Smith, the heavy hand of regulation, where there's always strong control, and coercion is at the basis of every act. Every state act has to be coercive by design. And therefore, when we have a state that wants to have a positive mission as opposed to a purely negative one, we have what we could call absolutism or despotisms or tyranny. The state, as envisioned by God, has a negative function only. And when we ascribe to it the ability to serve a positive good, such as welfare, the family, education, health, once we ascribe it the capacity to do those things and to work in those areas, well, we invite great disruptions of the marketplace, great hazards to prosperity and capital, and we invite a kind of politicized economy, a kind of a warfare economy, where everybody's in it for himself, and we fight for our share of the state pie. And when we've been converted into that kind of people by having states and having public schools, the state is no different from the federal government, and the people in the state are no different from the people who are subject to Washington, right? The dole class, all the dependent class, all the one percenters who make their billions of dollars trafficking under federal favor. The people in states, the people of the country. Of course, there's huge crossover in those groups. They reflect who they are, right? Their governments reflect who they are, and the people reflect who the government is. The government wants people to be dependent. It wants them to be incapable of the basic necessities. That's why you have constantly changing FDA dietary guidelines and so on. The current theory wins, and we have to regulate things and declare new theories every now and then to show that we're current, right? And what we have though is the idea of the lesser magistrate, which says lesser authorities intervene against greater when there is a wicked thing afoot. When wickedness controls, when wickedness reigns, there has to be a lesser authority. It could be a sheriff, it could be a county government, it could be a county clerk. In the context of the lug butt mudslide, the county clerk is your defender, right? He's the man who defends marriage in your state and in your county. It's his job. It's his job. He swore to do it. And in every county in the state, the clerk has not done his duty. He's effectively violated his oath of office. So states are intervening bodies as against the national government. And that's how the founders, the anti-federalists, whom you, my listener, probably are very sympathetic with, that's how they viewed the challenge of a national compact among the states creating the federal government. They were wary of that, and the anti-federalists, Patrick Henry and many others, said this Constitution will bring a tyranny. And they were right. It did bring that, and all the tyrannies we have today are constitutional, right? Every single one of them, from price controls on wheat, the gigantic regulation of interstate commerce through the Commerce Clause, and many other vague authorities that come out of the Constitution, creating giant systems, right? Giant governmental systems in commerce, all in commerce, and we are poor for it. So we have to have states. We have to esteem the state at its very best and its very best intention. I've been dealing with a complex legal case of a friend of mine who's a very godly man, and he was convicted, and you can read about him at Nooganomics.com. He was convicted on 4 counts of criminal counts of exercising his constitutional rights. That was what he was convicted for. He was convicted for not operating in commerce, and the areas for which he was tried in a day-long trial in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, were the exercise of the property right of travel, which he did under the Constitution as a free user of the public road. And he was convicted of not having a driver's license, not having insurance, and not having a proper tag on his vehicle. He didn't show proofs of being in commerce as he was supposed to, right? And the other count was a gun count. And so he plans to challenge the state on two of its very bleak and not so innocent systems of law, on the right to bear arms and the right to exercise a property right in Tennessee by movement, the free movement of the individual. That's a right, by the way, that many Hispanic people who are here use. They operate freely under the Constitution, and they travel back and forth in cars and trucks and motorbikes, and they don't have driver's licenses. They don't have to have driver's licenses. The statute, and I don't know that they know that, but the statute is very clear that they don't have to have them. Neither do you. You, my listener, your 16-year-old son and daughter, they don't have to have driver's licenses either. Just read the statute, okay? Lawyers don't read the statute. Lawyers are not going to tell you how it works. That guild of people do not appreciate basic English language and the basic rules of statutory construction. Just read Tennessee Code Annotated 555301, the driver's license application statute. Clearly, it is a voluntary system, and it has to be voluntary for the system to be constitutional. If it were compulsory, it wouldn't be constitutional. It's voluntary for a reason. And here, this defendant, Arthur J. Hirsch, is saying, "Well, I can't be forced to give up a right. I can't be forced into commerce." Well, this is David Tulis, and we're not forcing anybody to do anything, but we are inviting you, my listener, into local economy and the free market. I do appreciate your giving me just a couple of minutes of your time. We are here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. I've got some very, very important things for you to hear.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect a cloudy and cold start to your Wednesday. Getting breezy out there. Highs only near 45 with some late clearing tonight. Lows into the upper 20s after a frosty start. A great-looking day Thursday. Lots of sunshine. Highs into the lower 50s with more sunshine for Friday as well. Join us for a great worship experience at Abba's House in Hickson, featuring inspiring messages by Pastor Ron Phillips and activities for all ages. Services start Sunday mornings at 10:30. More at abbashouse.com. And I'm Source 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Ward.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
Hot News Talk 1240.
On your signature, you can get $150,000. Can you believe that? $150,000 on your signature. Hi, I'm Bruce Krebs with the Entrepreneur Source. There's a program right now that you can get $150,000 on your signature with no pledge of collateral or personal guarantee. Call me at 423-875-5621 to learn more. 423-875-5621. You've been thinking about starting a business and becoming self-sufficient. Don't do it on your own. I have a proven track record for the last 13 years. 96% success rate. I can guide you into a franchise where you will pay yourself through the startup phase with very low or little risk. Call me now. I'm Bruce Krebs at 423-875-5621. 875-5621. And make sure to listen to the Entrepreneur Hour every other Wednesday from 11 to 12 o'clock here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Call me now. 875-5621.
While politicians debate climate change and taking our guns, they leave America vulnerable to disaster. You need to act now to keep your family safe and prepared. Do you have an emergency plan? Do you have long-term storage food? Do you have the skills and mindset to survive a disaster? If not, what are you waiting for? Call P5 Preparedness right now, 423-602-2175. Do you honestly think the government is going to help you? If you do, you are wrong, dead wrong. Don't get caught unprepared. Let the experts at P5 Preparedness get you ready for any emergency or disaster situation. Today, we offer a wide range of classes for the beginner on how to prepare, as well as the expert prepper. We stock a wide range of supplies, including long-term storage food, water filtration, outdoor gear, tactical gear, and plate carriers. P5 Preparedness, East Brainerd Road between I-75 and Gun Barrel Road. You will see the Army Deuce and a Half truck. 423-602-2175, 1309 Panorama Drive, Chattanooga. P5preparedness.com.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably. I'm right, and I'm not wrong, and I'll never back down. Conflict works. Allow it.
It's The Herd with Colin Cowherd. Right here and everywhere. Noon Eastern.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Fox Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Wu. The month-long armed standoff at a wildlife refuge in Oregon ends with 1 dead, 8 arrested.
Around 4 p.m., the FBI and state police set up a roadblock on a remote stretch of highway and intercepted the group's caravan as they attempted to meet with supporters in a neighboring county.
Fox's William Lajeunesse. Donald Trump's campaign bowing out of the upcoming Fox News GOP debate Thursday night. This as his presidential campaign manager accuses moderator Megyn Kelly of being completely obsessed with the candidate. Challenger Ben Carson saying,
"It's really not about him. It's not about me. It's not about anybody except the American people and the opportunity to really give them a vision into what we propose as the solutions for the multitudinous problems."
Carson speaking to Fox Business Network. Fox News, we report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio with your Hot News Now update. In the hours after a 20-year-old was shot on Sheridan Avenue in an apparent gang-related shooting, the Chattanooga police have responded to 3 separate calls of shots fired that could be connected to this gang-related shooting. Officers did arrest one 18-year-old Delvante White at 9 p.m. He apparently, according to police, had a handgun. He claimed that it was for personal protection. A 4th subpoena now in the Ottawa rape case. Steve Holmes, second education director for the Hamilton County Schools, will be getting a subpoena to testify on February the 15th. It was announced on Monday that the DA, Neil Pinkston, was going to send subpoenas to County School Superintendent Rick Smith, Assistant Superintendent Lee McDade, and Ottawa High Principal Jim Jarvis to testify at the preliminary hearing on February the 15th. And DeMonte Chile received his Purple Heart Award during a private ceremony on Tuesday morning. He was presented the award by Brigadier General Terry V. Williams for injuries he sustained during the July 16, 2015 terrorist attack.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Expect a cloudy and cold start to your Wednesday. Getting breezy out there. Highs only near 45 with some lake clearing tonight. Lows into the upper 20s after a frosty start. A great looking day Thursday. Lots of sunshine. Highs into the lower 50s with more sunshine for Friday as well. Join us for a great worship experience at Abba's House in Hickson, featuring inspiring messages by Pastor Ron Phillips and activities for all ages. Services start Sunday mornings at 10:30. More at abbashouse.com. And I'm Source 12 Chief Meteorologist Patrick Orr.
On AM 1240, Hot News Talk Radio.
When the weather turns bad, turn to AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. On the net, hotnewstalkradio.com. Follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. From the Hot News Talk Radio Weather Center. Chattanooga, we've got you covered. When the weather turns bad, the Tennessee Valley turns to Hot News Talk Radio.
Go, 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 go.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Live from Chattanooga, Tennessee, it's Nooganomics with David Tulis.
Local economy and the free market as ideas will be more widespread if there is more personal regeneration that occurs among a people in, say, a given town, a given county, or country. If there's more, might say more Christianity afoot, there will be more prosperity, less tyranny, less despotism, less poverty, less injustice over time. That is the promise of Christianity, of the gospel, where people, because they repent of their sins, are more like God, right? They're more interested in justice. They're more interested in charity. They think less about their own needs and their own problems, and they think about others, just as Christ did as the savior of his people, and of course, as the example to all men. He put his people first. He put the needs of those he was going to save before his own comfort, his own glory, and he shed everything that he had, all of his divinity. He shed that on the cross, as it were, facing death at the hands of the wicked, right, of the Pharisees of his day, just as we in our day face not necessarily death, but maybe financial death and other kinds of death, social death, capital death, at the hands of the good people in Washington who are operating in terms of not of godliness, but of ungodliness. I say that, put it that way, because I'm holding in my hand a Puritan paperback from from Thomas Watson. It's called The Godly Man's Picture. And it is a book that I've started reading. I've read a few pages this Lord's Day before helping my wife Jeanette with her necessaries in the kitchen or having breakfast. And it tells about how really, if you think about the Puritan ideal, it tells about how you have a better local economy than a less good one. And of course, as a Christian, I admit to being a sinner, right? I admit that the law of sin that's built into my members from the fall, Adam's fall, is still there's still a law there, but it doesn't control, right? Because I've repented of that state of being by God's grace and follow. I follow God in what I'm doing in my life and how I'm living my life out in the details. But the book, interestingly enough, has as its first work, soul work, is the state of hypocrisy. How is it that I'm a hypocrite? Can I be a godly man? Can there be a godly picture, a godly man's picture of me that includes me if I am a hypocrite? And it has what's great about Watson is that he has just the pithiest, shortest little rebukes. They're constant jabs that he makes at our temptation, our desire to look like good people, right? To look like honest people, to look like Christians, right? Though at heart we're not. And the temptation for hypocrisy is not just among people who are lost souls, right? It's greater among professing Christians, people who are in church, right? Who make a profession of being Christians. He says, the man who is a pretender to saintship, but whose heart tells him he has nothing but the name, carries Christ in his Bible, but not in his heart. Some politic design spurs him on in the ways of God. He makes religion a lackey to his carnal interest. That's a very typical Puritan phrase. What is this but to abuse God to his face and to serve the devil in Christ's livery? Livery is what the butler at Downton Abbey wears. Livery is the servant's garb, right? You pretend to be a Christian, but you're just the devil. You're serving the devil in Christ's butler's uniform. And he says, to have only a name and to make a show of godliness, it is odious to God and man. He says, the hypocrite is born under a sad planet. He is abhorred by all. Wicked men hate him because he makes a show, and God hates him because he only makes a show, right? A show of goodness. The wicked hate him because he has so much as a mask of godliness, and God hates him because he has no more. The wicked hate the hypocrite because he is almost a Christian, and God hates him because he is only almost one. And there's this show of piety, of course, is why people are hypocrites. They want to look like they're true and they're good. They make they're only comets, right? They have a show of piety. They're dissembling tears. They're dissembling tears drop beside God's bottle. Their prayers and fasts prove abortive. A poor reward, the empty breath of men. The hypocrite may make his receipt and write received in full payment. And then he tells about Augustus Caesar. He had great triumphs granted to him, but the Senate would not allow him to be consul or to sit in the Senate house. Hypocrites may have the praise of men, but though these triumphs are granted them, they shall never have the privilege of sitting in the Senate house of heaven. What acceptance can he look for from God, whose heart tells him he is no better than a mountebank, right? A charlatan, a fraud in divinity. That is a terrific quote in which he talks about the pageantry and the devout stage play of the hypocrite. Christian, if you mourn for hypocrisy, yet find this sin so potent that you cannot get the mastery of it, go to Christ, he says. Beg of him that he would exercise his kingly office in your soul, that he would subdue this sin and put it under the yoke. Beg of Christ, Thomas Watson says in his book, The Godly Man's Picture, to exercise his spiritual surgery upon you. Desire him to lance your heart and cut out the rotten flesh, and that he would apply the medicine of his blood to heal you of your hypocrisy. Two hearts, he says at the end of this chapter, two hearts will exclude one, from heaven. So the Christian really is where local economy has to find its strength. And that is to say, not just the show of virtue, right? Not just the show of honesty, not just the pretense of caring about the neighbor, the customer, but the actual doing so, the actual doing of the things that we are supposed to do, right? Not just the show, a presentation, a pretense of caring for the poor and caring for, and that's why many people who have a kind of a Christian impulse, they rechannel their mercies to lobbying Congress, right? To defending defending food stamps and the like. I have relatives who are very liberal Christian people, and that's their charitable work, is writing letters to Congress to not cut food stamps or to include more people on the Medicaid roll. That's their virtue, and of course they're getting other people to do it. They're sanctified and pure and removed from the dirty, the filthy, the angry, the poor, and don't have personal contact in their successes with those who are in bad shape. There's a story in Atlantic Monthly about the decline of the driver's license. I mentioned that because of the theme that we operate on here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, and that is that there's more liberty out there than you realize. The Tea Party people, often the conservatives, the Republicans, who are very sympathetic with me and with whom I'm very sympathetic, often think that we're far gone. And yet I think if a man asserts his rights, that man will have them. And you don't have a right if you don't assert it or you don't defend it. You have to be what's called a belligerent claimant in person. That's a legal description of one who says no. He simply says no, and stands firm. Well, we are brought to you by Ducks, the indoor professionals, formerly known as Duct Busters. Ducks will clean the mold and mildew out of your long neglected ductwork, that mysterious domain, right, between your vent and your HVAC system. Call Ducts, 876-9907, 876-9907. One of our advertisers has had great success being on our station, has broken into the Saudi Daisy market, which it had not gotten into until it became a patron here, an advertiser here at AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio. Do think about joining us as advertiser with your business, your nonprofit, your church. We are certainly glad to connect you with other people out there. You, my listener, though, are the man who matters. And whatever we can do to help you be well-informed and to be have a bright view on the future, that's what our job is here at the radio station. Again, we are AM 1240 Hot News Talk Radio, where we argue that you should love your neighbor and buy local. Consider the multiplier effect, right, of the locally spent and locally invested dollars. And if you need help counting those dollars, make sure you contact Eric Pelton. He is an accountant and a tax preparer, has an office in Saudi Daisy, main office on Brainerd Road, just near the Food City, not too far away from that. That's EJ Pelton Company. He has been an accountant for 37 years. The website is ejpelton.com. That's EJ Pelton, PELTON.com. The number is 622-3156. That's 622-3156. Make sure you contact Eric to have your tax work done as needed. And not far from Eric, of course, is Advantage Printing. With the blue awnings, Advantage does a great job in mailing services, for which I use him as a homeschool newsletter editor. He also does offset printing for big jobs and color printing, digital printing, mailing services, large format projects as well. That's Advantage Printing. Alan will treat you well. He knows all the postal regs. So if you have anything going out for a nonprofit group that you are a part of, make sure that the designer gets a hold of Alan at Advantage Printing. Advantage Printing, it's to your advantage to call now and have plans for your next project to be handled there. 629-1800. That's 629-1800. Advantage Printing. Atlantic Monthly, in an article by Julie Beck, is telling us that the driver's license is declining as a phenomenon. There are some cultural reasons for that. In 2014, just 24% of 16-year-olds had a driver's license, a 47% decline from 1983. So that's a 20-year decline. 47% when at that time 46% did. At the tail end of the teen years, 69% of 19-year-olds had licenses in 2014, compared with 87% in 1983. That's a drop of 21%. The reasons were top three reasons given by the Atlantic Monthly is that the young people are too busy, don't have enough time to get a driver's license. That's 37%. Owning and maintaining a vehicle is too expensive. Reason given by 32%, and able to get transportation from others about 31%. So about a third given to each of those reasons. There's more liberty than you realize, and you can tell that often by looking at government websites. At the Social Security Administration, on a page that describes Social Security numbers for non-citizens, you will be shocked. Well, maybe I was pleasantly surprised to read about Social Security numbers. Here you are, an alien in this country. Do you have to have a Social Security number to get a job? Well, no, you don't have to have one really to do anything. I opened a bank account at Pioneer Bank, which was finally absorbed after 3 transactions absorbed by Regions. I didn't have a Social Security number. I had a bank account at Regions without one for several years. Don't have to have a number to get an account open. And they can't prevent you. No bank can prevent you. There may be some changes now with the Patriot Act, but if you don't have one, you can't be denied one. Here's what the Social Security Administration says to people who are of lesser status than you. Right? We're talking here about non-citizens. You, my listener, being a citizen of the state and possibly of the federal republic. Unless you are a non-citizen who wants to work in the United States, you probably don't need a Social Security number. We read. It goes on to say Social Security numbers are used to report a person's wages to the government and to determine a person's eligibility for Social Security benefits. That's why the number exists. You need an SSN to work, collect Social Security benefits, and receive some other government services. Lawfully admitted non-citizens can get many benefits and services without a Social Security number. You don't need a number to get a driver's license, register for school, get private health insurance, apply for school lunch programs, or subsidized housing. Some organizations use Social Security numbers to identify you in their records. Most, however, will identify you by some other means if you request it. Again, we're quoting here the Social Security Administration, which says that the number is very narrowly tailored use, very, very narrow. I had to sue Tennessee state government under Governor Sundquist to get a driver's license without one. It was an ordeal. It was an ordeal, but one that I from which I profited greatly, despite distress at home, as such things are bound to cause. We can't assign you a Social Security number solely for you to be able to get a driver's license or a service that requires a credit check, according to the SSA. Although many companies, such as banks and credit companies, may ask for your Social Security number, you generally aren't required to provide one if you don't have one. So you see there, no one can say, well, you can't get this benefit or can't have this connection unless you go out from this relationship into the federal jurisdiction, apply for a number in a kind of quasi or pseudo contract with the federal government in commerce, getting this number, coming back to our state and our place with that number in hand as proof of an arrangement, and then give us that number. There's no authority from the Social Security Administration for anyone to do that, not even Commissioner Green, whom I sued to get a driver's license without a number. And I bring this up because I want you to realize that there's far more liberty than you think. You think that, and you have this misimpression about our situation, probably because of people like me. Okay, I admit it. We talk about despotism. We talk about lack of liberty. We talk about offenses against the Constitution, and we make a big deal about how commercial government, as I like to call it, has pushed back the realm of operation, the scope of operation of constitutional liberties. Well, it has, but that doesn't mean you can't exercise constitutional rights. But what I think you have to realize is that there's a cost. There's a cost to exercising constitutional rights. David Fowler from Family Action Coalition of Tennessee made that point in opposition to a very good piece of legislation last week in Nashville for interposition. He argued that if you vote to interpose on marriage, then you have to count the costs that come from our state, Tennessee, being involved in commercial relationships with the national government. And so he I think he rightly angered the pro-lifers, the pro-marriage people who wanted this bill to go through, the Beavers Pody Defense of Natural Marriage Act. And I'm on their side. I would say I'm on the side of the interveners, the interposers. But David Fowler makes a good point that if you pass a bill like that, you have to account the consequences and you have to follow through. That means that the state stands on its own against the national power and effectively says go to Gomorrah, go to Gomorrah and do yourself, is what it would be saying. And I think the subcommittee that voted for it voted against this measure, including the Ottawa state representative here in the Chattanooga area, voted against it. They said, well, we can't bear that cost. Somehow we have to be brave, but we don't want to be brave if it costs us something, if we lose money or if we offend the people who are highly dependent now on national revenues. We have more liberties than we realize, but what's happened is that the Tennessee government, through craft, right, through a kind of hypocrisy, has deceived the public, has deceived you and me into believing that everyone, commercial and private, must obtain taxable privileges to do certain things. And that's why I've focused a great deal of my interest on the driver's license question, partly because I want to be welcoming to immigrants to Tennessee. I want immigrants to know that they have a liberty to travel without government permission. They can. And white people and black people who are Americans can do it too. They can do it too. This is not just limited to aliens. It can apply to black people who are born in this country, born in this state, to white people, to Oriental people, and others who are here in local economy in the free market. They don't have to get this permission. It is a history, really, of how the state has forced a franchise and a privilege upon people in the operation of their cars and trucks. They are being told that they have to forego their valuable rights. And according to a legal filing on this question, the history of this invasion of the people's right to use the public highways shows clearly that the legislature simply found a heretofore untapped source of revenue, got greedy, and attempted to enforce a statutory code in an unconstitutional manner upon those free and natural individuals who have a right to travel privately upon the highways. This was not attempted in an outright action, but in a slow, and here's the language I appreciate, a slow, meticulous, calculated encroachment upon the people's right to travel. And the state, again, commercial government, extorts money from our property. That's what's happening. You have a property right of movement, and you can't exercise that right without being extorted by the state, threatened by the state's officer, for not having this permission to use, as they say, to operate a motor vehicle, which is an act in commerce. A free person, a free Hispanic, right, the free Guatemalan here in Chattanooga, he can exercise the right to travel by truck or car. And he may be waylaid, he may not be. I need to find out more of how our new residents are treated. There is no profitability in continued peace and safety, so law enforcement has become bounty hunters to fleece the public through scare tactics, intimidation, and the threat of loss of freedom in order to keep funds flowing. And it is said in this legal filing with the state government that I have the privilege of reading, that not having the form, not having the document, is equal to a civil death sentence. A civil death sentence if you don't give up your constitutional rights and obtain the favor, the privilege, the license of operating on your property rights through the movement of yourself down a highway. That destroys life, that denies the right to travel. This is David Tulis.
I'm blowing everything up. We're starting over. I'm doing a new show. I want guys who push it to the middle of the table and go over the top. Take a risk, fail miserably.